chapter 11 was East Asia, so it was not necessarily just China, but who else? Japan, Korea, Vietnam. I'm not really going to stress those. That's going to hold you guys accountable on your own. We'll be talking more about Japan later on. But for right now, I'm going to just do a quick, fast fly through some of these Chinese dynasties. Looking at the Chinese dynasties, though, I want to talk about the song that those of us who were at the review did. And this song is going to help us all out. Remember, all the history of China in one song. Okay, you look at all of these, and they're kind of broken up by time period. In the first unit, we learned about the Shang, the Zhao, the Qin, and the Han. This unit that we're doing right now, or chapter 11, we're doing the Sui, the Tang, and the Song. In chapter 14, you'll do the Yuan, which are the Mongols, and then the Ming. The last Chinese dynasty will be the Qing, and then finally, Chinese dynasties collapse and turn into a republic. That republic will not last very long. The Chinese Republic is going to give way in the Chinese Civil War, and the communists under Mao Zedong is going to win. Mao. And then after Mao, there's going to be a reformer who's going to turn China into sort of the economic super powerhouse that they are today. His name is Deng Xiaoping. Mao and Deng. So now we're going to sing this. Those of you who came to the review session know the song. For the rest of you, if you don't know it, you'll pick it up. It's to the song Frere Jacques. Okay? You repeat each line twice. Are we ready to do this? This is going to be on the podcast. So loud and proud. Tanya, I want to hear you too. 1, 2, ready, go.
Sheng Zhao Jin Han, Sheng Zhao Jin Han, Sweet Tang Song.
Again.
Sweet Tang Song. One Ming Republic, One Ming Republic, Mao and Deng, Mao and Deng.
Yes, did awesome. That was great. Now, so that's a way to help you remember the chronology and all the dynasties. Excellent stuff. Well done. All right, so today we're going to learn about Sui, Tang, Song. Remember those three. Can you give me Sui? What did they do? Real fast. Those bullet points we talked about.
Reunify China.
After who?
After the Han.
After the Han. Who were we talking about the Tang? Nikki. Cosmopolitan. What were they do? So Cosmopolitan, they did what?
They organized and they cleaned and they created
Trade. And the last one, the song. Modernize. Technology associated with them. Okay, so let's talk about each one of those. The background of the collapse of the Han Dynasty. Towards the end of the Han Dynasty, landowners are going to start to get more powerful. Okay, and they're going to start taxing. There's going to be discontent. You start taxing the people. Okay, you're going to often lead towards rebellion. Some Han generals are going to start to look to align themselves with some of these landowners and create these things called warlords, a period of rebellion. China, remember we talked about before, we often see in between dynasties, between many of these dynasties, you have China collapse into warlords, into local regional landowners. Okay, and it's hard, then you're going to need every time that it comes back together, you're going to have a dynasty that reunifies them, often with some sort of harsh dictatorial kind of rule. Okay, and that's what happens here. During the Han Dynasty, we saw, remember, Confucianism and traditions, but with the collapse, all the Confucianism is going to go on its not be as prevalent later on. So here's the Sui Dynasty. You don't need to know who started this, but I definitely want you to know that it is a short-lived dynasty, a powerful, a very strong dictatorial kind of rule. So a lot like legalism under, who was that guy before that started that? Who started the Qin Dynasty? We need to know Shi Huangdi. At the beginning of the Sui, not so much, but know that they copied a lot of those. Okay? Strong central government, harsh rules, and a forced labor system. And we can understand why. Because he saw a period of what? A period of war in states. And how would that affect how he's going to see the world around him? Everybody's bad. And so we need to protect our civilization from people who are inherently wicked and who want to break this up. The Sui Dynasty, if there's one thing that they kind of begin, that the Sui, the Tang, and the Song will be similar in some regards to some aspects, like transportation and communication, distributing, trying to get land back to the people, sometimes successful, sometimes not. But the idea of trade, so here's a picture of the Grand Canal. China is a river valley civilization, but how many rivers? Two rivers. So they realized two rivers that go east and west, it'd sure be nice if those rivers were what? connected. And so we see the beginning of attempts at facilitating this connectedness, and so they build a grand canal that connects these two. And we start to see these same things like government built bureaucracy based on merit and so forth. All right, now the Tang Dynasty, very much different in size and in its makeup. The leader of the Tang Dynasty, and you'll see this in your little cartoon comic book. He was half. He wasn't full Chinese. He was half Turkic. Okay, from Central Asia, and so he's interested in a lot of these. He has a lot of Central Asian influences. Which direction is China going that we haven't seen before? Looking at the map here.
West.
West towards what? Central Asia. Okay, and along what kind of routes there? Along those trade routes. Okay, so we see Tang's going to develop along those lines. There's a leader, Li Shimin. He is. He expands the territory. Confucianism will come back again. He improves on the developments of the Sui dynasty, like transportation, communication, and so forth. And again, government bureaucracy based on merit. The relationship with their neighbors will often be one in which the Tang are going to impose on them. When you say good relationships, well, they force themselves on there, but they do spread out. And along with, in terms of the conquest west, but what about the rest of East Asia? The beginning of what we're going to see really develop under the Ming Dynasty is this system that if you're not part of China, but you're near us and you're around us, then you are going to be kind of under this Chinese umbrella. You're not in China, you can still be your own region, country, or whatever, but you need to pay tribute to us. You need to understand that we are the power around here. Okay, and you must give us tribute so that we don't come and attack you one day. And respect us. And even came up with the way that when you come to the emperor, you must bow to him. And their term for bow tao means to knock one's head, to bow, prostrate on the ground, hands and knees on the ground, and be able to put your head all the way on the ground. And we're going to see that this is going to create an issue during the Qing Dynasty when the British show up, and guess what the British guy's going to do? He's not going to do this. Okay, and he says, I won't do that to my own king. I'm not going to do it to you. So, but this sort of represents this relationship that China has with its surrounding neighbors in East Asia. Two examples of some gifts that they give. This is of a statue from the Tang Dynasty. One of the videos that you can look at, you don't necessarily have to, but shows Chinese dynasty during this period. You can see the very long sleeves, very indicative of those Turkic or Central Asian influences. And so there's this dance scene that you can see on the website of modern Chinese dancers dressed in traditional Tang costumes, still with those long sleeves. Chinese imperial power. They not like the Sui, but the Tang will be an imperial power like the Han. So a rebirth of them again, truly an empire building. And they were roughly they're contemporaries, or they're at the same time as those Islamic empires that we learned about. Those Islamic empires were expanding, and China during the Tang is expanding. So it would make sense that these two expanding empires want to build their economies. There's going to be renewed contact or increased economic transactions going along the Silk Road. Both will benefit from that. And remember, we even had a test question on it. What is the number one thing that results after the things are bought and sold? What comes along with, cross-cultural interaction? We see a prosperity. Good. That was one question. And we start to see spreading of ideas and cultures and so forth, and ultimately even blending of those, which we're going to see an example of. Okay, but now during the Tang, we say, hey, a rise of Confucianism, but more than that, we see Buddhism start to emerge. Buddhism is originally from what region?
India.
It's from India. Remember, not necessarily successful in India because for many they don't see it as that dramatic of a shift from Hinduism. But in Buddhism, but in China it is. During the Tang is when it really sort of takes root. Okay, and since it's from another place, anytime a religion from one place goes somewhere else, what's going to happen to that religion? It's going to change. And how's it going to change? What is it going to do?
Either blend with the former one, or just be completely changed.
Yes, it's going to take on aspects of whatever ideological religious philosophies that were going on there. And so we see that definitely with Buddhism in China, even when it goes to Japan, Zen Buddhism there, integrates with the ideas you can see here with Confucianism, Taoism, and other indigenous philosophical beliefs really try to create a Chinese kind of Buddhism here. Interesting though is that when the Tang Dynasty starts to collapse and they start to go on to some hard times, they blame Buddhism. The state will. And so Buddhism, although it begins and takes root during the Tang, is also going to be persecuted towards the tail end of that. A great statue, an amazing statue, 233 feet tall. An amazing statue in China of a giant Buddha, originally started by a Buddhist monk. You can see the people below that, the size compared to the rest of the statue of the Buddha here. And so that's interesting. When we talk about Buddha, many people in the West see this. Let me go back here. Let's do this. This is an example of that blending of Chinese and Buddhism. This is a statue of Buddha. We saw him before. He's in his pose. We see many of those same things: the long earlobes, the neck folds, the position of his hands. But interesting, if you look at the face, they're very East Asian characteristics. Okay, so even the Buddha himself, the Buddha, is taken upon this sort of Chinese characteristics. Okay, and this is a piece that was produced during the Tang Dynasty. Now, this next one, though, many people have said, well, isn't this the Buddha? Okay, when I go to my local Chinese restaurant, I see this, the laughing Buddha or the fat Buddha. And I want you to understand, though, that this is not the Buddha. And this isn't even a Chinese, necessarily, version of the Buddha. It's just a misconception by Westerners, okay, by us here in America and other places. As seeing this as the Buddha. This individual is Budai. He is a Buddhist. He is not the Buddha. Okay? He is somebody in Chinese history who took on Buddhist characteristics along with existing Chinese beliefs and turned into this this individual, a very happy guy. The laughing Buddha, he's known as, represents a contentment, things being okay. He's very heavy, he's jolly, this is the time of plenty, okay? And we see representations of him in many places like restaurants and temples and businesses and that sort of stuff. Budai and Buddha is one of the reasons we think that maybe there was that confusion in the West of a similar name, even though if you look at it, it has nothing to do with the original word Buddha. It's only in the Western we see that confusion. And also, he's in places that we see as traditionally Chinese, not statues of the Buddha. We see him. So that's often that confusion, though, but not Buddha. Okay? All right, so the Tang Dynasty, like I said, they'll blame Buddhism a little bit. Rebellions will start to break out. And then we're going to start to see them cut off. No longer are they as cosmopolitan. They're going to start to shrink and become a little bit more Chinese. The next dynasty will not be as imperial or as grand. And who would that be?
Song.
The Song Dynasty, okay? Looking at the Song, you can see they don't extend out into East Asia. Into Central Asia. They're staying there on the coast of East Asia. And interesting, this is a period of economic prosperity and technological advancement and cultural advancement. It is not necessarily as focused on long-distance trade. The next map actually shows here, because the Song Dynasty won't stay just within one. Even those divisions are going to rip the Song Dynasty in half. And for a while, we'll have just the Southern Song. I don't need to know the details on that, but I just want you to understand that it is not as controlling, as powerful as an imperial empire that we saw in the Tang Dynasty. The Song will unify again after 6 decades, 60 years of conflict. They come out and they bring back. For the most part, when you see a Chinese dynasty, they're recycling those same ideas over and over and over again because they were successful. How do you run an empire? I need a bureaucracy. Great. Okay, I need to be able to have a state, a religion or ideology, and sometimes they pick up different ones. So we start to see even the concept of the mandate of heaven. It began back in the Zhou, but it will still, each dynasty reinvents that, reincorporates those things. Confucianism comes back. We call this Neo-Confucianism a period, because remember, Buddhism is somewhat out of favor. So Neo-Confucianism. In terms of the economy, we start to see some new economic sort of ways in which to facilitate, not necessarily long-distance trade, but within China itself, we see this thing called interregional credit system, or flying money. In credit, we don't understand credit. By the way, credit for you, when you turn 18, you can buy things on credit. You don't have to pay for it. And when you turn 18, it's like, great, I got my first credit card. It's like, that's bad news for you, because you may not necessarily be the most responsible person. You may go to the store and buy Fruit Loops and a bunch of stuff. You pay for those Fruit Loops for the next 10 years. You know what I mean? in interest rates. So is that a bad thing to have? No, it's an extremely good thing to have, because it's not about Fruit Loops. It's about things like houses. How many people have enough money to walk into the bank and go, I'd like to buy this house, here's my money? That doesn't happen that often, okay? So in order for me, I want to buy a house, I can't pay for it, so I get a line of credit. Now, why does the government and everybody, why does my nation want me and all of you to go out and buy houses? What's that? It's the linchpin of our economy. Okay, we want to see how well our country's doing, how many new homes are being built, and how many people are selling their existing homes and buying other homes. So how we want to be able to people do that, because what is that? If you're going to buy a home, that money goes to the bank? No, because the bank's going to give it to the people who built it, the contractors, the guys who worked on it, all the sort of people associated with that. Money starts to circulate, and so that's what the Chinese did here. They started paper money, realizing carrying coins is only so good. Like, sooner or later it becomes too burdensome and being able to reduce the weight, and also have, not necessarily about weight, but the idea that money isn't necessarily the value. We want to have something else that represents that. Okay, the coin used to be silver or gold or something that has value that we all agree upon. Nowadays, that $20 bill has no value. Okay, what it has a promise, an agreement that we all decide to say, yes, we agree that this has value. And I can take this agreement, and I can take it to the 7-Eleven and say, hey, do you accept this as value? And he says, yes, you can get a Slurpee. Okay? And he takes that, and he uses that thing. But it's not real. There's no real value behind that. And the most interesting thing is, you think about how much does it cost to produce a $20 bill, a $100 bill. It's cost the same. It doesn't cost $20 to make a $20 bill. In a weird twist of fate, the thing that I can't stand are pennies. Okay? I think pennies should go away. Pennies cost more than a penny to produce.
Not anymore. Not anymore. They fill it up. They fill it up with nickel now.
According, when did you see this?
They stopped it after like the 80s.
No, if you just, I'll put a link on the blog. There's a 60 Minutes article that came out last year talking about.
1.6 cents or something.
Yeah, it's like 1.6. It's just over a penny to produce a penny. The federal government loses money when we produce pennies. The problem, though, is, and there's some people in our government, some representatives say, yes, let's get rid of the penny. Just go on nickels. Everything's 5 cents. You round up or round down. What's the problem if you're a business, though? What will you do if you sell things? What are you going to do to your cost of them?
Round up.
You're going to round up. So what's that going to cause in our economy?
Inflation.
It's going to cause inflation. But other nations have given up their bottom level of currency, whatever, and then we see inflation. But you know what usually happens? It's usually just a spike. Things kind of level themselves off. I don't dislike Abraham Lincoln. We have him on the $5 bill. I'm fine with that. But the pennies, it's always, does anybody collect pennies? My mother still to this day collects pennies. She saves 100 pennies. That's not a lot of money. Anyway, I'll put a link to the 60 Minutes article about what's happening with pennies. Anyway. Song society, like we saw with the foot binding video, in a time of plenty, we can start to see the wealthy individuals who are successful. The treatment of women are going to decline, and so we saw women's rights go down. There's that neo-Confucianism philosophy, even in Japan, it's we call Zen Buddhism, and so forth. And then these are a list of inventions, kind of goes along with that homework assignment. I want you to watch that video. Paper, printing, credit, gunpowder, compass. This Chinese ship is called a junk. Porcelain's going to improve. Porcelain will sort of reach a high point under sort of the Ming Dynasty, Mingware we'll call it, and that's that traditionally when you go to when you go to a Chinese restaurant, they have to bring out a bowl of stuff and it's blue and white, right? That's traditional Chinese porcelain. Come out during the Ming, and all this is going to go away though because guess who's going to finally get over that Great Wall? The Mongols. That's going to change things a whole bunch. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done. Put it away. How was that? That's not painful, huh? Manageable?